This is B2Bold, the podcast for B2B marketers and industry players who think differently and lead boldly. I'm Hayley Dole, and each episode I chat with boundary-pushing marketers about what it really takes to grow a brand in today's world. Hello and welcome to today's episode, where I'm joined by someone who has not only shaped iconic brands, but also reshaped how we think about marketing's role in culture, community and commerce. Shubhranshu Singh is the former CMO of Tata Motors commercial vehicle business, a global automotive giant headquartered in India and one of the world's largest manufacturers of commercial vehicles. His work has consistently bridged the gap between deep consumer insight and large-scale impact. Named one of Forbes' world's most influential CMOs in 2025 for his data-driven creativity and cultural influence, Shubhranshu is a true thought leader. He was recently appointed to the inaugural board of directors of the Effie's Lions Foundation, the group behind Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity, where he represents Asia Pacific and champions the marketing education and access for underrepresented communities. From leading brand and marketing at Royal Enfield to senior roles across Visa, Hindustan Unilever, and IT services in the US, Shubhranshu brings an incredibly rich and diverse perspective to the marketing table, one rooted in storytelling, systems thinking, and a passion for positive change. In this episode, we discuss the marketing playbook, creativity, commerce, and community. Welcome, Shubhranshu. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Hayley. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. So let's get into it. First of all, let's start with your journey. You've worked across some of the world's most iconic brands, from Hindustan Unilever to Royal Enfield and Tata Motors. How has your view of marketing evolved through these chapters?
Yes, I think I'm very privileged on three counts. One, that I have had a career more than a quarter of a century, all through in the area of customer-facing marketing. In this journey, I've also been privileged to work across various types of modalities, whether it's business to consumer, or business to consumer. I have shaped brands which operate through myriad channels. I've been blessed to work with brands which have a very high reliance on marketing communications and PR, as also brands that are intensively about key accounts, customer relationship management, and very much about decision making through B2B formal processes. My journey, therefore, has been, in a sense, about understanding consumers, shaping insights, and then reaching out with both the who am I and why by me part of the equation. I was also blessed, secondly, to have started life at Hindustan Unilever. It's an iconic institution in India. It's commonly known as the CEO factory. You get to learn the essentials and the basics of marketing in a very method-inspired, rigorous manner. And once you've learned classical marketing, I guess you can be up to mischief and make all the mistakes that you want to make. And then thirdly, I've been blessed that I have laterally grown from organization to organization. So I have been lucky enough to work in youth categories. I have worked with bottom of pyramid consumers. I have been able to shape the narrative through digital means, through traditional above the line media. And in this process, I have lived through different stages of consumer evolution in India and largely Asia Pacific, but in my last two assignments also as a global responsibility, where, automotive most recently, before that, financial services and broadcasting and classical consumer packaged goods. Now, your question is very important. How has the journey shaped and what has changed? I think that is true of marketers across the world. Marketing has grown from mere persuasion to really platforming. You're no longer a billboard with a logo on the canvas. You're actually a platform who is trying to shape and orchestrate an ecosystem of voices. And there are many authors today in the world of marketing. It's no longer just the brand manager and the agency, but peer-to-peer marketing on social media, influencers, culture industries. So many voices are in the chorus that if you have one discordant note, the whole thing becomes unbearable. But when they're in resonance and in harmony, you make beautiful music. So I think marketing has changed for the better. There are many, many more factors to contend with, but I think on the whole, they add to a much bigger, better, and more importantly, consumer beneficial reality. So I'm really blessed to have begun my marketing career 1 year before the turn of the millennium, from 1999 cut to 2025. And I'm as enthusiastic about it as the first day I walked in as a management trainee at Unilever.
That's fantastic. Yeah, some really great brands in the mix there too. So a lot of really interesting learnings that you can pull from with your experience with any campaigns and future endeavors you work on. So you've been recognized by Forbes as one of the world's most influential CMOs. What do you think made your work stand out on a global stage, especially from a creativity and culture perspective? Because like you just mentioned, there's so much noise out there, there's so much content, there's a lot going on.
Yes, I think it's a great honor, and really I felt very elevated in terms of spirit and commitment. I think it recognizes several things. Obviously, the more recent work that I and my team at Tata Motors Commercial Vehicles had done, uh, it has not traditionally been known to be a platform for very enthused customer facing work because the modalities were largely business to business. I think the fact that a business to business brand can work on so many deep emotional insights and transition their business from being a traditional legacy ridden customer focused mode of operation to being one that celebrates creativity, that derives almost a quarter of its eventual business through purely digital means, that creates voices. It's not no longer about selling trucks, but about elevating livelihoods. It's about recognizing the fact that every truck has a truck driver, that they are really center of the plate when it comes to driving the economy, from zero to almost 30 million plus engagements on influencer work, uh, taking our media from 1 or 2 languages to 11 national languages, creating customer profiles, more than 60 million customer profiles, implementing an entirely new facade in terms of domains and elevating our social media presence. All of that must have been recognized. But more importantly, I think it's recognizing that India is very much mainstream, that Indian marketing, Indian insights, the Indian economy, all of them are way more deserving of the spotlight than has been traditionally the case in the past. And I also feel that my own personal endeavor to write, to teach, to share has also probably beeped on their radar pretty brightly, because in the 50 people that were there, we were only 2 people from India, and I happen to be one of them. So it's very gratifying. It's very humbling, but at the same time, I feel very energized because I see it as a triple recognition for me as an individual, and for my sharing and all the intellectual leadership that I have attempted to provide to marketeers in India. Secondly, for Tata Motors Commercial Vehicles, a business and a brand that I had the privilege to lead for 4 years. And lastly, and most significantly, for India and India's moment on the global stage. So I'm delighted.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. And, it's only a very small percentage of people that reach that level of achievement. So congratulations. But yeah, I can relate to what you're saying around the challenges of creativity within B2B. The majority of my background's been in the tech and SaaS space, so it can be very focused on, like features and product, and yeah, bringing that creativity into the mix is always a bit of a challenge. So, in your experience, what does it really take for a brand to become culturally relevant, not just well known, but woven into people's lives and identities?
So that's a very profound question, Haley. I think, you know, everybody can do product place price promotion. Everybody can do awareness and consideration building. If you're cutting a check, you're not addressing a problem, right? I have low threshold of awareness. I go into high decibel advertising and I am noticed. But that's not really profound. What is truly profound is when you create cultural currency, when a brand becomes a verb and an adjective, when a brand finds its way, into everyday language, when it's sung into lullabies, when people have tattoos, when brand becomes a symbol so that people who are engaging with the brand, A, they derive meaning, but more significantly, by possessing the brand or engaging with the service that the brand provides, they are building who they think they should be, they ought to be. That construction of self through a brand is a very, very rare occurrence. Only a few brands achieve that status. And I think that is really precious. Now, cultural mainstreaming of a brand does not happen by spending more money. In fact, my counsel would be that if in the world where people are shouting, you should meaningfully whisper, because there's a greater chance that people will look at you if you're different. Also, it requires tremendous amounts of consistency. I can't meet you one day and be all about jokes, meet you another day and be all about pathos, meet you a third day and be all about adventure. I have to signal consistently and stand for something. It requires authenticity, which every PowerPoint presentation of every brand manager has a slide devoted to being authentic. Most people talk about it, very few actually live it. And in my definition, for cultural mainstreaming, authenticity is simply I am who I am, and what you see is who I am, and I am consistently who I am. Those are the three variables to my mind about authenticity. But profoundly, I think cultural mainstreaming also requires humility. And because advertising is the groovier part of the marketing toolkit, everybody gets into this rah-rah advertising mode. I made it with this director. I made it in this exotic location. Look at how much money I spent. Look, I got AI. And so a lot of the trending and the fad-inspired stuff doesn't live for very long. Whereas actually, meaningful marketing is about keeping things simple, keeping things consistent, and being humble. If you don't listen, you will not be able to speak right. If you don't revere the customer, you will not get, a relation with them. You have to do 2x to be able to get 1x in return. That's the equation that marketing inspires. And I have pretty much through my career lived with those principles in mind. And I think culture building is also about being legacy minded. If you're only about this month, this quarter, or this year, you're looking at life through the rear view mirror. And, legacy building means I should be proud to tell my grandchildren I created Pro Kabaddi. I should be proud to tell my grandchildren I was able to take the portfolio for Royal Enfield from a 350cc or a 500cc motorcycling portfolio into 650cc and above. I should be proud to tell my grandchildren that I did something that touched the life of more than 6 million truck drivers in India. So these are the things, if you're mindful of legacy, if you're mindful of consistency, then you are going to do the right things, not because you want a good look in history books. We are not deluded to think we will be remembered for so long, but a brand manager has 5, 10, 15 years of a career, whereas a brand technically lives forever. So if you have that, timeline in mind, you do things with greater humility and hopefully with more permanence.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love what you said about authenticity and like brand driving longevity. It's so true. So you've led marketing across both B2B and B2C contexts. How do you think the principles of brand building differ or stay the same?
I'm often asked this question, Haley, because the presumption is that commercial vehicles is indeed a business to business marketing job. It is business to business because everybody who buys a truck wants to get a return. It is an investment. They are deploying that commercial vehicle in some nature of business, whether they are first time driver entrepreneurs or indeed massive corporations who have hundreds of thousands of vehicles in their fleet. Irrespective of that, when the wheels are turning, it should be true to its specifications and it should earn them a return. So, yes, it is a commercial minded purchase journey. Having said that, I think trust, credibility, and branded positives, the fact that when you say a brand name aloud, do positives come to the mind or are you assailed by doubt and reflection? I think those are consistently the same across B2C and B2C, B2B. One of the common fallacies that I find, which have been, in a sense, given a lot of currency, which are basically people think business to business is about being hard nosed and business to consumer is about falling in love. That's not true. Emotion is consistently the bedrock for decision making in both. The difference is you are speaking to decision makers in B2B, whereas you are speaking to dreams in B2C. You know, if I buy a commercial vehicle and I earn a living off of it, and my family's good, future depends on that commercial vehicle, how can I not have an emotional affiliation to that brand? Obviously, I feel deeply and emotionally about the brand. But when I am a customer, I think about the brand essentials in terms of cost of operation, warranty, ease of servicing, spare parts, maintenance, and so on. So a lot of my decision making factors in the requirements of running my business. So I think uh, B2B is about speaking to decision makers. B2C is speaking about first appealing to them, putting that hook in, making that engagement fun. But essentially, whether it is trust or clarity or credibility, to my mind, there is no difference between B2B and B2C. And it's no surprise, therefore, that some of the most profound brands in the world are actually B2B brands.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously the product features and capabilities and service capabilities are important, but at the end of the day, a lot of people buy from the brands that they like and love. So I'd have to say that's very true. So, how do you see the relationship between creativity and commerce today? Is it possible to prioritize both innovation and performance, or do you think one always takes the lead?
No, I think to my mind, there is no conflict between the two. Your question is well intended, but I think it sets it up as a false binary. Innovation and brand trust, performance and pure brand, advertising to the heart and advertising to the mind. These are all things that we have created for ourselves. I think I don't look at them as polar opposites. Marketing is not a tug of war. Marketing is like a dance. You're doing the tango. It takes two to tango, right? And if they are in sync, if you are not convinced of who I am, you will not buy me. And if you do not experience the product lives up to your expectations, you will not buy me again. And so, from interest to attention to actual purchase to post purchase, we live in an iterative world. We live in a world with feedback. And that feedback has been multiplied manyfold because of the arrival of social media, because of the ability for people to be linked up, irrespective of what the manufacturer or the brand owner is saying. In fact, one of the challenges that advertising has today is that very often people see it as self-seeking and they have the opportunity or the means to opt out of it. And so not only one voice, but the voice of critical reasoning, voice of influencers, how you appear in everyday life, how visible your brand is, how deeply your brand engages with society and consumer lives. All of that matters a great deal more than simply running a 30-second television spot or a radio jingle. So I don't see any conflict between marketing which is intended to only service the brand and marketing which is embedded in the product or is meant to be showcasing innovation or media spends that are purely programmatic and performance led. I think it's like a bowl of spaghetti, right? You cannot find your way. It's all in the same mix. And it has to be looked at in totality. Proportions keep changing. And so the brand manager is like a juggler and a trapeze artist rolled into one. Gone are the days when you could have a gatekeeper mindset, buy attention from a rate card, have a finite product portfolio, and dictate terms to the customer. That era has gone forever. We live in a very volatile world, but a world which gives opportunity much more so than before. It's up to you as a marketer to make the most of that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that analogy of it being like a bowl of spaghetti. I think it's one of those questions where it's kind of a little bit frustrating to marketers because I think most of us are aligned on that. Like it's definitely not a choice between brand and performance, but I do kind of see sometimes in the B2B space, especially in the tech space, there's a lot of focus on performance funnels and generating fast leads and accelerating sales and ROI. And, we kind of sometimes it's forgotten that, what's driving that is the brand. Because if you're delivering poor performing content or irrelevant content or content that doesn't hit home with the customer throughout that process, then, it's less likely that you're going to get what you're after at the end of the day, which is those conversions.
Absolutely. And I've used this example in the past. You know, if you didn't know me and we met for the first time, and I kept telling you that I'm a very funny man, after three times of that declaration, you would probably be wary of me and think I'm a jerk. Instead, if I told you three jokes and it made you laugh, I don't need to declare to you that I'm a funny person. You will rationally make that out on your own because of the response that I got from you. And so you have to understand the language, you have to understand the context, I have to understand your cultural sensibility and crack a joke that makes you laugh. That alone will do the job of you being convinced that I have a sense of humor instead of me, saying me Tarzan all the time and saying I'm funny, I'm funny. That doesn't do the job enough.
Exactly. Yeah, it comes back to that authentic connection. So let's
Exactly.
talk about your role on the FE Lions Foundation board. What are some of the challenges and opportunities in advancing marketing access and education for underrepresented communities?
Well, the FE's Lions Foundation has just been formed. It's a not for profit company listed in New York, which is where the FE's Worldwide is also headquartered. As you know, Informa's acquisition of Essential meant that the Cannes Lions Festival and the FE's now sits within the same firm. And these are respectively, the FE's is the highest platform for effectiveness in marketing, and the Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity has been historically the highest platform for judging creativity. In coming together in this not for profit foundation, they want to expand the footprint on what was historically a collegiate program. And they are saying marketing should not be restricted to pedigree, geography, or continuity. We must have disruptive ability to bring people into the mainstream. There is abundant and more talent in Latin America, in Africa, across Asia Pacific. But because the developed world tends to have a north based mindset, how do we get more of the global south into that ecosystem? And one of the ways in which to do it is to use the intellectual property, the depth of intellectual property that the platforms have, to be able to provide greater access to students from marginalized communities, to be able to work with educational institutions and bring them into that mainstream, and also to draw upon corporate sponsors to be able to subsidize that cost where educational institutions are concerned. I have been engaged with both the FEs worldwide, more recently in this capacity, and with Alison Womack and the team that leads the foundation. We are looking at how to make it meaningful but relevant, and also a longer term development in terms of genuinely bringing the best of Asia Pacific into the global mainstream. And I'm super enthusiastic about this. I also want to do more in terms of spotlighting a lot of what is below the threshold in terms of advertising energy in India. For example, India has more than 18 officially recognized languages. Each one has its own ecosystem of print media, television media, advertising media, and very often also a film industry of its own. Now, and these are 80, 70, 80 million people in each cluster. India alone, Haley, has more than 650 million people who are less than 30 years of age. 400 million Indians are less than 20 years of age. India has 850 million handsets with access to the internet. 75% of India's cell phones are less than 25,000 rupees. So obviously, this giant ecosystem of 1.4 billion people is not sitting for a Madison Avenue or a London to recognize their advertising talent. There is a lot happening here, but very often it gets restricted. It's insulated within that ecosystem. And I see it as one of my responsibilities to put much greater spotlight so the world recognizes how much spontaneous creativity, how much of depth is there in each one of these ecosystems. And I think the world as a whole will benefit if we draw out a lot of what's happening in India, in Vietnam, in Indonesia, in China, and put it for the world to see and appreciate and enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. So much untapped potential there. So it's really, yeah, great work that you're doing. What's your perspective on experiential marketing today? How do we create meaningful brand interactions in a world that's both digitally saturated and increasingly fragmented?
So, experiential marketing is a very big word in the sense that it encompasses practically everything we do as marketers, right? I often, with my teams in training sessions and otherwise, I have this bit of a challenge framework. I say, look, you could choose to pivot on any one anchor and everything else will be drawn to that corner, right? But of all of these, to my mind, customer experience is the most significant because you are in the business to delight customers, right? How can you have great marketing or even possible marketing which disappoints customers? These are contradictory. You cannot have marketing that excites them, draws them to the brand, makes them transact, but then disappoints them because they're never going to come back again. And we live in a world where loyalty is becoming more and more fickle. So it is in commercial interest, it is very much in the business interest. If you want to grow your revenues, if you want to grow your market share, if you want to build depth of association, you have to delight customers. And customer experience is not about having a fancy website or occasionally doing brand campaigns. It's about how you pick up a phone. How soon does your service get delivered? Are you living up to your warranty? Do people speak well of you when they speak to each other? If your sister was buying her next vehicle, would she speak well of my brand or not? That's what customer relationship and customer experience truly amounts to. But, to answer your question in specific terms, to my mind, customer experience is not about memory, it's about feelings. Nurture memories. And bad news travels 5 times faster than good news, right? So if you have had a bad experience, if you have felt bad, if you have felt little, if you felt compromised, you will remember that no matter how long it takes for you to surface that. And if you had one bad experience, it nullifies many positive experiences you may have had in the past. And therefore, customer experience in service industries is super critical because you may think the world of a hotel or a restaurant, but it's actually the waiter who's taking your order and the chef who's cooking your meal who make that brand come alive to you. And so I put a lot of weight on net promoter scores, on customer sensitivity surveys, on the here and now and how they're feeling about the brand for the near future, because that's what informs their mindset when they engage with your brand. So, to my mind, make them feel special, make them feel remembered. People do A B testing on websites. basically to be able to remarket or retarget better. And for the record, I've said this time and again, I just do not like the use of the word target group because it makes it seem like you're going to hunt something, they're human beings, they are mindful customers, they're engaging with your brand out of preference. You should call them intenders, recommenders, potential customers. I just think it's loathsome to call them a target group. And again, in this world where we are living active digital lives, segmentation is also becoming a very watered down practice, because I may be one segment group for something and I may be entirely different segment group for something else. I am a segment of one when it comes to coaching my son for university admissions. He's in grade 11 IB. I'm in another segment group when it comes to planning holidays with the family. I'm in a third segment group when it comes to long motorcycle rides. So, and it's all me. I enjoy music, but I also enjoy solitude. I love, seven-star hotels, but I also like having tea on a roadside cafe. So, to segment people conveniently is delusional. And I think that is the genesis for bad customer experience. You must treat people as a market of one. You must remember they're human beings. They're giving you precious, hard earned money. And it is your moral obligation to make them feel special, make them feel remembered, and give them the best experience that you have, which basically means you have to stand up the hierarchy on its head. Typically, decision rights flow top down. But if you want to make customers feel special, you have to make decision rights bottom up. If it's not a problem, the wait staff should be able to solve it in a restaurant, right? And very often I think there's a lot to learn from. I mean, it's just coming to mind now, so it's something that is something I'd like to share. When you go to a restaurant and say, "Look, this spaghetti which I ordered has too much garlic, or I just don't like it. It's too salty. It's got too much chili in it." They don't come with their recipe book and say, on the last occasion when they say, "Sorry, ma'am," and they take it right back, no questions asked. That's the spirit with which you should be able to sell a truck, a vehicle, a software program, whatever. If we ingrain that sort of mindset, the world will be a world with happier customers.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like the spaghetti analogy is really delivered in this session. It's great. But yeah, I agree. The customer should be at the center of all the decisions that we make. And I think, again, like in B2B, what you're saying about make them feel, sometimes that can kind of get shoved to the side and we focus back again on all the other driving revenue and performance and all those things again, forgetting that, that is
That's
what is
right.
truly going to drive those things. So
That's correct.
a good reminder. So, what advice would you give to marketing leaders trying to move their brand from functional messaging to a more human, community driven approach?
Well, I mean, be more human when you're doing your job, right? Don't look at what we are selling, look at what we are solving for, right? And the world is today without boundaries. What I mean by that is when I'm on my phone looking at a banking app, and the next moment I'm on my phone booking a service for my automobile, I don't make a distinction saying, "Oh, you know what, these are legacy companies and automotive, and oh, you know what, this is a fintech company, so it must be really smart about its app." I live in a continuum. I decide whether I should buy a new laptop or take a fancy vacation. So basically there is cross category conflict, there is cross category osmosis, there is a percolation of experiences. My recommendation is be humble. Don't be talking gibbly-gook. I wrote an article a few years ago saying marketing suffers from two basic problems: expertitis and departmentalitis. This is not my department, it's not my problem, it's somebody else's department. Well, guess what? If your invoices are paid late, your B2B customer is going to think you're a lousy brand. So it doesn't matter if it's accounts payables problems. It is just as much the brand's problem. An expertitis means you don't tell me what is important. I know everything about digital marketing. I will not listen to the sales department. Well, turns out that marketing is in the service of greater commerce. So we must be mindful to market reality, customer reality, company reality, and bring it all together. So be humble, live in the real world, don't wear a professional uniform being a marketer, uh, and experiment. People are too template ridden. My teams, I keep encouraging them to experiment a lot, fail small, fail early, no harm done. But chances are, if it's a success, you can scale it up to get really magnificent success. So my advice would be, if you want to do human storytelling, if you want to have a human connection with the brand, be human yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that templated approach because I think like there's obviously going to be more and more of that with the introduction of AI and all the tools that give you those shortcuts, and it can be really tempting to just rely on that and use it as a bit of a crutch. But yeah, we need to keep reminding ourselves to be creative and try new things. So finally, wrapping up with our last question, what is one bold idea you would love to try if there were no limits?
Wow. Um, I think I've been pushing the envelope all through and doing things which are not necessarily limited to the category norm, etc. But to my mind, the era of functional marketing is gone, right? Function tells you what it does. Emotion tells you why that matters. So if I had the opportunity to do anything that I wanted to, I would make customers and marketing managers sit in the same place. I would love to make a living brand museum, for example, not objects locked away in fancy glass cases, but just a place where people could come, have a cup of coffee, eat a bowl of spaghetti, meet other people, engage with them, young kids getting to look at what a truck engine is all about, for example, or young sports enthusiasts being able to do commentary for a cricket match. Brands are, very much within office organizations, if you know what I mean. Brands meet customers only in the marketplace. What if we could bring the marketplace into offices? That, to my mind, would be a very bold idea, and I would really enjoy a less formal, a less structured, but more fluid, more entropic, more chaotic connection between brands, brand managers, professional writers, critics, digital marketers, young kids, housewives, the world as we know it inside a brand space. That would be real fun, I think.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah, I think anything that's more engaging and more interactive and collaborative is definitely the way we're going. That's the future. So thank you so much for joining us, Shubhranshu. I've really enjoyed hearing all your insights today. You've been a really fantastic guest.
Thank you, Haley. I thoroughly enjoyed our interaction and I hope to see you again soon.